So at that time, were there ideas of multipartyism, or what were the talks about around
Multipartyism came much later. Much later. And it was not achieved until, I think, until 1992.
That was much later.
Prior to that, it was only one party. When Jaramogi Odinga tried to form another party, he was not allowed to. There were several other attempts which were not allowed until multipartyism came in 1992. And I should tell you, I was involved in multipartyism, you know.
Oh.
After disagreeing with Moi, I joined the opposition. And I was chairman of Ford in Kitui district. Ford was the party which gained us multipartyism. Forum for Democracy.
Restoration and democracy. So that is now after Moi, you had disagreement with him, and then you were not able to retain your seat in the member.
After that, I went into business.
You went back into
business.
For how long did you go into business?
Oh, I'm still in business to date.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
the company I had then, which is known as Modern Investments Limited, is the company I run even today.
So at maybe some of the changes that were there that you saw coming up, for example, you mentioned the mobile phone, you saw it, how it developed, and now it is a common thing for this generation.
What we saw mobile phone, we saw M-Pesa, we saw SGR, we saw Expressway. These are fundamental changes, you know. We saw many roads being tarmacked. We saw the airport growing by leaps and bounds. We saw these aircraft. We used to travel in small aircraft. We saw these huge aircraft being introduced. You know, we saw the country really growing and becoming a factor to reckon with.
But is this maybe one thing that, as you think back, you never thought we would reach an age where this is now normal?
Sorry?
Is there something that has shocked you that, for example, you mentioned M-Pesa. Is there something else that you see happening now that is, when you think back a long time ago, you would not have ever imagined?
To tell you the truth, when I see SGR and I consider how long it took us to go to Mombasa, I am very impressed. Very impressed indeed. When I see direct flights started during our time, by the way. I remember traveling in TWA as the Minister for Communications, or Permanent Secretary rather, for Communications. I remember traveling in an inaugural flight of TWA and traveling directly, or rather traveling to the United States. And the Kenya Airways also traveling, you know, having reciprocal rights. These were great changes in our country, you know. But tarmacking, I'll never forget, because it took time to travel to Mombasa. I remember traveling there with my family, plenty of dust and so on. Today is a joy. Driving to Mombasa, well, there are many vehicles, by the way, but you can't imagine what it was to travel on a dust road to Mombasa from Nairobi. It was an experience you would never forget, you know. So we have seen the country really grow in the true sense of the term. Nairobi then was a fairly small city. Today, Nairobi is a large city, you know. When you fly or even care to drive around, you notice that Nairobi has grown to the extent of being a large city. It is a large city. So we have seen all these changes, you know.
True. And maybe as we can now focus a little bit on the changes in Nairobi Baptist. You have seen it, as you said, when it was the first mixed.
Oh, yes.
How was that?
We have seen, my wife was a very strong member of the church, by the way. We have seen Nairobi Baptist Church grow from the first building, which is still there. I don't know what they call it today.
Old Hall.
Yes. To the second one, and to the worship center which it is today. We have seen numbers grow exponentially and the founding other churches, So we have seen Nairobi grow and remaining true to the word to date. One thing I respect about Nairobi Baptist Church is that it has stuck to the word. And when you know the word, you cannot be deceived by anyone. Because the Bible is your guide. And the Nairobi Baptist Church sticks to that. That's why I stuck with the church.
What are maybe some of the highlights you remember in Nairobi?
I remember the change of pastors. I remember having the first African pastor, Mutava Musimi. That was a great change. I remember having Jose Mensah. A number of pastors, but they have all been very good pastors, sticking to the doctrine. There is no pastor who tried to mislead the church, not one. So I respect the leadership of the Nairobi Baptist Church for being consistent and sticking to the word.
I remember when they were building that Bethel Sanctuary. How was the process of building? Were you there? Were you part of that?
Oh yes. With the fundraising and so on, the concept, some of us thought the church would be too big. But today, look at it, it fits in very well, in spite of the fact that it has borne other churches,
So it was a futuristic church at that time?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's remained focused.
So at that time, now between the time you left Moi and then till 2002, which is the next, I think, highlight in Kenyan's story. That time you are in business now.
I was in business, yes.
Yeah. Do you remember the Rainbow Coalition? And
yes.
How was that experience at that time?
It was a great experience. You may not know that I myself was the Secretary General of NAC, as we call it.
Oh.
You know how it came about? After multipartism, each party started to go on its own. In 1992, we should have won, really, but because there were several parties, the CORD, which was one to begin with, broke into two. Or rather, Ford, which was one, broke into two. Odinga's part and Matiba's part. You remember?
Yeah.
And then other parties. And Kibaki formed
DP.
His own party, DP. If it were not for that, we would have won the elections in 1992. Because people are ready for change. The same happened in 1997 because we were divided. Moi won. But we were united with one thing, that is dislike for Kanu and Moi. So much so that our popular tune was Yote yawezekana bila Moi. Do you know the meaning?
Yeah.
Everything is possible without Moi.
Yeah.
So in 2002, when we united, it started with Kibaki, Wamalwa, and Ngilo. And I was the Secretary General at that time, personally. They started by having tea together until this became a political party. And when we formed NAC, other parties joined us. Until eventually, there was a breakup in Kanu itself. That's when Professor Saitoti, Kalonzo, Mudavadi and others broke off from Kanu. And that was when Moi decided on Uhuru Kenyatta. And these senior politicians felt, and rightly so, that they had been overlooked. So they broke away, and Odinga came to us, I remember. I said he could either form his own party or join us if we agreed on certain conditions. And then we agreed that he would take the post which was earmarked for Gilu, namely the Prime Minister. That's how he came to become Prime Minister, you know. Anyway, I was the Secretary General, I saw all this, and with that unity, we formed the first NARC government under Kibaki.
Under Kibaki. But now when Uhuru Kenyatta was chosen by Moi, you being a friend of Kenyatta, do not want to support or you're aligned?
No, I was a friend of Moi, of Kibaki.
Oh, you are more friend, also a friend of Kibaki.
Kibaki, Boya, and Moody Awori and I were at Mango at the same time.
Oh, Tomboy?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. And we became friends since that time.
So you were close with Kibaki?
Oh, yes, yes, yes. I was very, very close to Kibaki. As a personal friend, actually. And I had a lot of time for him because he's a very bright man. Very bright, very focused. He doesn't interfere with people's affairs. He's a man you could depend on.